Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over signs that you are a magnetic man, that you have a lot of magnetism, and usually that's a very powerful presence in a room. And a lot of men, especially if they're introverted, they might not actually know that they are perceived this way, introverted or someone who has social anxiety or both. Because a lot of times what happens is they're so focused on themselves or not focused on how other people are behaving around them, partly because they're anxious. But some introverted individuals, it's not really that they're anxious. Sometimes they're just feeling very emotionally drained. And so they just might not be aware that this is happening. So this video is for informational purposes. And the first one is actually when you share something about yourself, people are drawn in or they even stop to listen. This one is way more common if you are a person who maybe you talk a lot about yourself in the beginning and then maybe afterwards you kind of just let other people talk. You might notice this dynamic right away, but you might not lean into it because you might be feeling drained, simply because if you are an introvert, that's what happens. However, interesting enough, you can use this to some extent to your advantage in the sense if you are trying to land an opportunity in an interview, you can talk more about yourself and see how people are drawn to you or how they listen to you, how they ask you more questions. If you're in a group of people and people are drawn to you, you can use this to express maybe opinions that you feel can benefit other people because it ends up, because this is happening, you are established in the leader role. And we're going to talk about more points, but I do want to mention the research is in the description box, but also if you want to improve your social skills or address any emotional behaviors, you can book a call with me and we can get to the root of those behaviors. The link is in the description and it's pinned in the comments. The next one is actually unwavering confidence in your passion and goals. It doesn't matter what your goals are or your passion. I think a lot of people get this confused. They think that your passion has to be something very specific in order for you to be magnetic or a powerful presence in the room. You could be talking about really anything, and the way you say it can be people can be very drawn to you. I can give you an example in my personal life. A lot of you guys know I'm in a long-term relationship, and I've been with him for many years. And he's a person who's very confident and comfortable in himself. He works in finance, and so a lot of times you have to talk among a lot of people, and you have to be really comfortable with what you're saying. And sometimes he shows up like that even in our relationship when he doesn't always mean to. Obviously, he's a lot more gentle and soft around me, but sometimes when he's talking about something, he can go into that mode. And interesting enough, a couple days ago, we were at the park, and it's going to sound a little silly, at least for me. He spent like an hour, about 40 minutes, telling me about mulch. He has a lot of interests, and so he's talking about mulch, which is a very plain and kind of boring subject. I don't know anything about mulch, but the way he talked about it actually was because he was so passionate about it. I know it's silly, it's literally dirt, but I actually learned things. It's almost like I was listening. It's almost like I booked a seminar about somebody who knows a lot about dirt. That's what it felt like. And it was actually interesting. I don't remember all of it, but I do know he mentioned something like different types of mulch. I can't really remember it, honestly, but it's because I'm not really familiar with a lot of those things. But the one thing I did remember is how he showed up. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different because I'm in a relationship with him. So, of course, I'm going to give him my undivided attention. But I definitely notice when he does that, when he turns that mode on. And I think he's almost like used to a particular audience, which is why he talks like that. And the passion shows autonomy and identity. And this is based on research, which is in the description box. But it's like an unwavering confidence. And research does show that shows self-esteem, which based on research, that in of itself can improve attractiveness and magnetism. And a lot of men who show up like this, they show up as a powerful person in the room, regardless of what you are talking about. It's just the passion that you are showing up. The next one is you are able to match people's tones and emotions, showing empathy and social awareness. This is very common with those who are a leader. We don't typically see, at least in research, those leaders that the crowd is drawn to, that the crowd really respects, rather than from fear, but from actual emotional connection. They're not somebody who they're a person they're terrified by. They're a person that they can trust, that they can lean on. And that person typically shows up with like the matching emotional tone and with empathy, because the leader is not a person who just dominates the entire room or group. They dominate when they need to, but they show up when they need to, because another side of being a good leader is protecting other people. And this is where that shows. You're able to show empathy and social awareness maybe when other people can't. We see this a lot with a lot of leaders where we can actually see this actually in research where some leaders, they use this to connect with other people. If you're seeing before campaigns like in the United States where I am, a lot of people actually, they go into spaces where a lot of people are. Like they might show a picture of themselves at a restaurant, like a very typical restaurant or a fast food area. They might go to lower income areas and like talk to people. They might hug some people during campaigning. And this is showing leadership. It shows empathy. And a lot of people are more likely to vote for folks like that because of that. It is a form of magnetism based on research. The next one is when someone talks, you give them undivided attention. It shows that you respect other people, but it also shows that you're not insecure to fill in the gaps. You are able to listen. You're able to learn. Somebody who's very magnetic, who's very powerful, they don't always need to be the loudest person in the room because they know that they don't have to be. They understand subconsciously. It's not always conscious, which is why I'm making this video. A lot of this is subconscious. You might not know you show up this way, but you are actually showing up as a person who you want to make someone feel heard, but you also understand that you can learn from another person. Great leaders don't just show up because they are terrified of they make other people terrified, right? That's not a great leader. It's usually a dictator, to be honest. A great leader, typically from research, someone who's very respected for many, many, many years, even after they are passed, there's still research up on their leadership skills. They usually are a person who's comfortable listening to other people. That doesn't mean they doubt themselves all the time. It means they listen, they vet, and they add that information to themselves. They're still confident about themselves, but they understand they can learn from other people, including the people that follow them and respect them. They understand that. The next one is that they respect another person's decisions while still holding their own decisions. This is actually more common in relationship dynamics. So if you're talking to a woman, you might notice yourself doing this. You do respect her decisions and you actually hear what she's saying. There's research on this. And actually, this is for men particularly, based on John Gottman's research, we do see that a man who's able to adjust his decisions for his wife or his girlfriend or whoever, he is more likely to have a long-term relationship and he's more likely to be respected. That doesn't mean he completely abandons his own feelings, but he understands that part of being a great leader in a family, in a relationship, is to hear what she has to say. That means you respect her decisions and she respects yours, but you make those decisions together to some extent. It's a interpersonal dynamic that's very strongly researched as something that creates not just magnetism and attraction, but also long-term bonding. And this is also common in conflict dynamics. If she says, I don't want to hear this right now, you can respect her decision and say, okay, I do understand that, but I want us to talk about this at some point because I think it's important. You're able to have a decision and respect hers at the same time. That's a good example during a conflict. The next one is you actually use positive humor to connect with others. So this research in 2017, and it looks like there was about, it was quite a big sample, about 15,000 within these. So how can I explain this? There were subsections. So the total of subsections was 43, but in total between those subsections, there's about 15K samples. So it's basically a meta-analysis is the best way to put it. So 43 samples of entire research, and the total of those research is 15K, if that makes sense. Basically, this meta-analysis was examining the role of humor in romantic relationships, particularly how it shows up in attraction, how it shows up as magnetism and leadership. And what we can see is that individuals who have humor styles that are intended to amuse and promote connection are positively associated with relationship satisfaction, attraction, and what we can also see is that these individuals influence desirability in both short-term and long-term relationships. You're a person who's very magnetic. And we can also see that participants actually felt, saw, and also perceived that individuals who are associated with negative humor is often rated a little bit less. And so if you're a person who's able to be very confident and very comfortable in your own skin, people are drawn to that. They actually see you as someone who's not just confident, but able to you're not so serious about yourself all the time. You can be lighthearted. It doesn't mean that you're always the expense of your own jokes, but it's more that you're able to make humor in situations that maybe other people can't. It displays intelligence, but it also displays that you're comfortable with different social dynamics, which a lot of people find very attractive and magnetic. And the last one is you are flexible with decisions and choices, which is good, right? We've talked about that earlier, but you have very specific boundaries you keep in place no matter what. It's fine to be flexible with your wife if you guys have been married for 20 years. That's pretty normal. But it also means that you don't stay in a relationship that she crosses boundaries or she talks to other men. That's a boundary that at that point you'll have a divorce. But maybe if she's a little bit emotional, sometimes that's common with wives. I see that in couples therapy. Maybe she's a little bit emotional at something that you're not really understanding. Maybe you think it's a little much, which does happen. Maybe you ask her to reel it in, but maybe it's not too severe where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to divorce this person because, you love her and you kind of manage, you compromise, but you still communicate, hey, I want you to understand that sometimes when I say things, I don't want you to take it so seriously or take it like that. This is just the way I am. I want you to understand it's not personal. You can have that conversation. But that doesn't mean you're going to set a very strict boundary. You're flexible. And she's flexible with you too. Maybe you need a lot of space. Maybe you need to play video games, whatever it is. She should be flexible about that time while still asking if you could spend time with her and maybe your family if you guys have kids together. Something like that. It's going to be flexible. However, specific boundaries, you don't let that be crossed no matter what, even if it's your wife. And so the research is going to be in the description box. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.